on the Axis defences at Mareth. By mid-March, the army had assembled in strength, and Montgomery's plans and preparations for a drive north were now complete. The key to Rommel's southern defences was the Mareth Line, a complex of interconnecting fortifications built by the French in the 1930s. These ran from the coast near Mareth to the Matmata Hills, through which there were few passes. West of the hills, however, there was open desert leading to the Tabaga Gap and the town of El Hamma. Long-range reconnaissance confirmed a route through the desert leading to the gap. Montgomery planned to send the New Zealand division with attached armour through the desert to assault the gap. While this wide flanking manoeuvre was being carried out, the Mareth Line would be engaged by frontal assaults mounted by 30 Corps, consisting of the 50th Division, the 51st Highland, and the 4th Indian Division. In reserve were the 2 armoured divisions of 10 Corps. These would exploit whichever axis of attack seemed most promising and pursue the retreating forces northwards. Holding the Mareth Line, Rommel had 4 infantry divisions of the Italian First Army, buttressed in the centre by the Africa Corps veterans of the 90th Light and protected on the flank by those of the 164th Division. Behind these, in tactical reserve, was 15th Panzer. But behind the Mareth Line, Rommel also had a second potential line of defence, before the open plains of central Tunisia. Near Gabes, the impassable salt marshes of the Chott el Fajjaj came to within 20 miles of the coast. If dislodged from the Mareth positions, Rommel planned to withdraw only as far as this line, where 10th and 21st Panzer were held in strategic reserve, ready to deploy in support either of the Mareth Line or of the Gabes positions. Montgomery, however, had requested diversionary attacks to be launched out of the western dorsal by the American Second Corps. By demonstrating towards the coast, Montgomery hoped that Second Corps would draw off the Panzer Reserve. Despite Allied concerns about the combat readiness of Second Corps, the American attack was amongst the most successful of all the preliminary operations. Advancing out of the eastern dorsal, the Americans quickly overcame light opposition, capturing Gafsa and driving some miles down the road leading from Gafsa to the coast. 4 days later, they seized Maknassi in the eastern dorsal and pushed out patrols into the surrounding hills. Meanwhile, Montgomery's operations in the south had met with mixed fortunes. The main attack on the Mareth positions had become bogged down in heavy fighting, and a bridgehead, won by the infantry, was counterattacked heavily by 15th Panzer. West of the Matmata Hills, the New Zealanders had stormed the entrance to the Tabaga Gap, but any further exploitation was soon frustrated by the arrival of strong enemy reserves. The Americans southeast of Gafsa were also attacked by 10th Panzer, but 2nd Corps, now commanded by General George Patton, was determined to avenge the humiliations of Kasserine and fought with skill and determination, throwing back 10th Panzer's attack with heavy casualties. Montgomery now switched the focus of his efforts from the Mareth Line to the Tabaga Gap, sending First Armour to help force a way through. Air support was called in, and the gap was saturated with air and artillery bombardment. In the first phase, tactical bombers added 400 tons to the weight delivered by the artillery. Then ground attack aircraft screamed in from the southwest, 30 of them every 15 minutes, flying almost at head height and shooting up everything that moved. While these operations were in progress, 30 Corps maintained pressure on the Mareth line, holding down 15th Panzer and preventing any further Axis reinforcement of the Tabaga Gap. On March the 27th, the New Zealanders and 1st Armoured, bludgeoning their way forward, were almost clear of the gap. Resistance on 30 Corps' front now diminished significantly as the Axis defenders began falling back towards Gabes. By the 29th, the fighting in the gap and battle for the Mareth line was over, and British armour was driving through El Hamma towards the Gabes line, the last major obstacle before the open plains of central Tunisia. In the west, 2nd Corps' progress had been checked by the arrival of 21st Panzer, but the American attack had now achieved all of its original objectives. The Panzer Reserve had been drawn east at a critical phase in the battle, and then held down in savage fighting, leaving the Axis with no strategic reserve in southern Tunisia. The Gabes positions proved much less formidable than might have been expected, partly because there had not been enough time to prepare them properly. The battle lasted for little more than a day. A breach gouged by 8th Army's infantry in the centre of the front was once again plugged by 15th Panzer. But against the withering fire of 8th Army's artillery, there was no hope of holding it closed for long, and there was nothing left in reserve. That night, the battered Axis divisions disengaged and fled to the north. From Gabes, the remnants of the once feared Panzer Army withdrew across the plains of central Tunisia to the comparative safety of the hills surrounding Tunis and Bizerta. Attempts to cut these forces off by attacking through the passes of the eastern dorsal were unsuccessful. But the clearance of central Tunisia gave the Allies important new airfields and radically transformed the balance of air power. From these new forward bases, the Allied air forces were able to mount a systematic offensive against Axis supply ships and against the ports and harbours in the Tunisian bridgehead. In April, the tonnage actually landed in these ports was less than half the required minimum, even for purely defensive operations. By contrast, the Allies had taken advantage of the winter stalemate to build up huge stocks of supplies and equipment, to build roads and airfields, and to amass the necessary men and arms for a decisive victory. The overwhelming material superiority the Allies now enjoyed enabled them to withdraw experienced units and replace them in the line with fresh formations, thus introducing untested soldiers to battle in the most favourable conditions. They also reorganised their command structure and redeployed on a huge scale, bringing up French and American forces for the final offensive, and thus ensuring that the victory honours would be shared equally by all the component nations of the military alliance. Yet despite this pressure and the hopelessness of their situation, the Axis defenders fought stubbornly, bitterly contesting Allied efforts to throw them out of their last mountain redoubts.